Hey there, Peter Haskins here with another video on this Peter Haskins YouTube channel. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. Another video about Charles Ashanin. So, many of my videos here on this channel who recently are about Charles Ashanin and about Robin Amos. Today's video is going to be about Charles Ashanin. And this is not just about him, but it is a story about his life that was written by him. It was entitled Guns in the Catacomb, an article that he wrote that was published in May of 1967 in the Russian Orthodox Journal. And I have a copy of this, and I'm going to be reading this today, and it is a fascinating story of his escape from Yugoslavia when the communists were after him. So I'm going to let this speak for itself. As always, continue to stay in touch and make comments at the bottom of the video, but I'm just happy to bring this story to you, written by C.B. Ashanin, as it has here, published in the Russian Orthodox Journal in May of 1967. Hope you enjoy. Bye-bye. Guns in the Catacomb by C.B. Ashanin. A man who refuses to desecrate a holy place with blood, even from his would-be murderers. In 1944, it became obvious that Yugoslavia was going to fall into communist hands. As it was a miserable prospect to exchange Nazi totalitarianism for a communist one, the only alternative was to attempt crossing the Adriatic to Italy, where the Allies were established. This brought me down to the Adriatic coast, where I managed to get in touch with the organizer of an escape party. He assured me that he had a place for me on his craft and was waiting only for a suitable chance to get off. Alas, he left without me. After the setback, I joined the Yugoslav nationalists who were camped near Podgorica, the present Titograd. It was the middle of November. The constant rain made the place look physically as depressing as the gloom which was hovering over the hearts and minds of men from war, revolution, and international politics had reduced to utter despair. But there was still a spirit of defiance asserting itself, which kept us morally alive against so many odds. After 3 miserable weeks in this place, the Nationalist Command ordered us to march towards Bosnia. As the march was scheduled for the following day, I decided to visit early the next morning a small hermitage in the vicinity. Its founder was an ascetic, much revered in these parts. I wanted to attend the communion service in the hermitage's small catacomb-like chapel. I badly needed spiritual help. When I reached the hermitage, I found to my disappointment that there wasn't going to be a service. The monk in charge had left with the retreating nationalists, not wanting to fall into communist hands as they were extremely hostile to religion. As I came out of the church, I met a young woman called Zagorka. Her family was living temporarily, she told me, in the hermitage. We discovered that her fiancé was a close friend of mine, and she insisted on my staying for lunch. As I was almost half-starved, I accepted the invitation gratefully. The simple lunch, consisting of a vegetable soup and bread, was delicious. The sight of the bread filled me with wonder. It was so scarce. During lunch, Zagorka's brother, a nationalist soldier, arrived. He told me that he was saying goodbye to his people, as he also was leaving for Bosnia. He begged me to delay my departure for a little while in order that we might go together to our new encampment. I felt uneasy about staying longer and made excuses, but he appealed to our being comrades in the same cause. This argument carried weight, and I promised I would stay, provided we left before long. He agreed. As I waited for my new companion, a feeling of alarming arrest came upon me. The urge to leave the place immediately was almost physically compelling. I reproached myself for this, thinking it was merely fear. A voice within me said, Go away now, please." "Why?" I asked. "Go now, you stupid man." "Just a little while," I said. "Go now," the voice insisted. "I command you go." "I do not obey. You are only my fear," I said. "You rationalize too much," the voice said. "There is no time for that." I waited quite a while, feeling like a caged bird. My friend finally came out. saying that now it was too late for us to leave and that we must stay overnight. He explained that his mother insisted on his staying until morning. Zagorka, too, came out, fear in her eyes. "For God's sake, go," she said. "Never mind my brother. The communists will surely attack this place tonight. They are after Father Thomas, and since you are a friend of his, they will kill you." Being one of those people who take feminine intuition seriously, my apprehension increased. But the evening was approaching, and I was not sure of the way, so I resigned myself to staying overnight. Just then, 2 nationalist soldiers came in. One was a student, a friend of Zagorka's brother, the other an exciseman, more than a little drunk. Zagorka tried to persuade them to join me in regaining our units, but the exciseman, carried by the courage of drink, was scornful of death. He patted his pistol to reassure us that he could fight half of the communist guerrillas all by himself. The other fellow was an old beau of Zagorka's and was there to try to woo her back from my friend, and he was determined to stay. Night fell. Zagorka, her sisters, and girlfriends organized an impromptu party for us men. The resourceful exciseman produced a bottle from somewhere. We had forgotten the march to Bosnia, the civil war, and the partisans when, at about 10 p.m., we heard a violent banging at the wooden blinds and shouts ordering us to surrender. It was the communist guerrillas. They threatened to set fire to the house. All at once the room was emptied. Everybody except the exciseman and I ran upstairs, bolting the doors behind them. The drunken exciseman, conscious of danger in spite of all the liquor, clung to me. "Save me," he implored. I grabbed my socks, which Zagorka had been mending, but deliberately ignored my boots so as not to make any noise. The only escape from this trap was to go down into the Catacomb chapel by the passage cut through the rock by the old hermit. I had been shown this passage earlier during the day. The exciseman followed me. We had our rifles with us. As we left, I shut the door behind us, but the latch was rather flimsy. We entered the chapel, and I led the way down the narrow aisle towards the exit. I hoped we might get out and run into the night. We reached the door, and I listened. I clearly heard an order being given in a hushed voice to shoot if anyone came out. We retraced our steps and hid ourselves behind an alcove in the wall where the venerable hermit lay. Although we were trapped, this place gave me much spiritual consolation. I felt deeply the friendly spirit of the old hermit. We waited. Soon we heard steps coming down the underground passage by which we had entered the catacomb. It was difficult to know whether we were pursued or whether someone sought refuge here like ourselves. The newcomers carried a hurricane lamp. There were 2 of them. They were armed with pistols and daggers and short machine guns. "Surrender!" they shouted. I recognized them from the insignia on his cap that one of them was a partisan officer. The guerrillas started swearing at us, at God, and at the sacred place. They were obviously apprehensive. The light of their lamp reflected the frescoes on the walls of the sanctuary, which depicted saints and apostles and prophets and martyrs, looking solemn and, I thought, distressed at the blasphemy. The screen separating the sanctuary from the nave was flooded by light, showing the 2 life-size icons of Christ and Our Lady. Above, over the entrance to the altar, was an icon depicting the Last Supper. All these gave me a feeling that here in this catacomb, this celestial assembly was gathering for some great Eucharistic celebration at which Christ was the host and the saints and angels his festively clad guests. All this had a terrifying reality, 1,000 times more real than the partisans, my friend and I, and our guns. It was we who appeared to be impostors and disturbers of something too sacred for words, and deep within me I prayed not for life, which was in danger, but for forgiveness. The guerrillas moved toward us. "They are closing in on us," said the exciseman, shaking violently and obviously terrified. "Please kill us," he said. "Throw a hand grenade under us. Or do you want me to do it? You know," he whispered, his teeth chattering. "If they get us alive, they will butcher us bit by bit." I was alarmed, for not only was there danger in front of me, but no lesser one behind me. I felt that my companion, he might do anything. A deep anger surged within me. We were in danger, and that was true, but no less were the guerrillas, for we were armed. Now was the time to decide, either to shoot or, if we surrendered, to be shot. As I looked at the altar, I remembered an old man telling me how transported he always became when he attended Eucharistic services in this little catacomb chapel, celebrated by old Father Simeon, the founder of the sanctuary. He looked, the old man told me, like one of the old icons come to life. Perhaps extreme anxiety plays on our imagination, for somehow the celebrating hermit standing there at the door of the sanctuary and holding the chalice was very real to me. In that moment, I felt that the place had an atmosphere of terrible awe about it. With my thoughts of shooting and killing, I felt a complete intruder there, without any right of asylum in this holy place. I felt alarmed. The danger from the loaded guns of our pursuers was in comparison a puny and childish threat. I looked imploringly at the icon of Christ, seeking forgiveness for my only too human thoughts of self-defense. But the same icon of Christ, which a few minutes before had conveyed to me a sense of compassion, now conveyed anger. Christ's words, "Be not afraid of them that kill the body, and after that have no more than they can do, but fear him who has power to cast into hell," flashed through my mind like flaming swords. I put the rifle against the wall. I felt a deep release. Something in me of the greatest importance was solved. I said to my companion, "Stay where you are. Do not move." As I moved toward the guerrillas, my eyes caught a fresco depicting Christ and his disciples in the storm, in which Christ was commanding the storm to be still. In my agitated state, this had a tremendous effect upon me, for it had a very personal meaning. I called out and surrendered to the partisans. They rushed towards me, holding their machine guns against my forehead. Suddenly, I noticed that my companion was standing beside me. At gun's point, they ordered us to move along the nave towards the exit. The door was locked, but the key was in the keyhole. One of the guerrillas attempted to unlock it, but could not. As I had been shown the peculiarity of the lock earlier during the day, I offered to open it. While I held the key with my right hand, my left was held firmly by a partisan. I opened the door. Outside there was pale moonlight. It was December, and the air was chilly. The cold air must have invigorated me, for I was suddenly filled with an irresistible force, and I pulled myself free from the hands of the guerrilla and ran forward. In front of me, there was a walled terrace. I jumped, but as my socks were torn at the heels, I slipped on the wet clay and fell. I heard a shot, "Halt, halt!" and a volley of gunfire was sent after me. I got up and ran towards a nearby quarry. Then a hand grenade was thrown at me, and I fell again. I was not sure whether I was wounded, but there was no time to think about that. After about 5 minutes of running over the rocks, I fell into an opening among the crags. The emotional and physical strain must have been intense, for I lost consciousness. When I came to, I noticed that I was bleeding, and this confirmed my fears of being wounded. I started feeling myself in order to discover the wound, but could not. Then I heard a voice nearby saying, "He can't be far away." I realized my pursuers were still after me. I felt helpless. There in the catacomb, my pursuers had had an advantage over me, for it was the sacredness of the place that had disarmed me. Then a sense of disgust with my hunters came over me. I remember their blasphemies in the catacomb. I recalled all the things which divided me from them and realized that we were two worlds in conflict without compromise. To be killed by them did not appear as tragic as having to live under them. Then I heard their steps receding. All became quiet. I reflected on my experience down in the catacomb. I was glad that I had not desecrated it with blood, even that of my would-be murderers. I realized that the deepest thing which divided me from these communists was just that for me there was something higher and more sacred in which I believed in, and they did not. I felt that the Sphinx of life had answered me its riddle, and in no way did I feel cheated that at 22 my life might have its end. I realized that I was on the verge of grasping a great secret, and the secret was Christ, in whom our existence touches the transcendent realm and becomes part of it. His words, "Put your sword into the sheath, for he who takes the sword shall perish by the sword," were spoken to me so clearly in that little catacomb that I had to obey. In the morning, I returned to the hermitage. Zagorka was overjoyed. The exciseman was there, very much alive and much, much sober. He told me that in chasing me, the guerrillas forgot all about him. He slipped beneath the communion table in the church. The guerrillas called out to him, but when he gave no sign, they left, thinking that probably he too had escaped. "You know," he said, "as I lay hidden in the church, I felt something terribly holy there. I felt ashamed that I had drunk too much." The guerrillas, engaged in pursuing me, never discovered the other 2 young men who were hidden by the women of the place. Before I left, I went into the catacomb to light a candle and say my prayers. As I knelt there, the story of Jacob at Bethel flashed through my mind. And Jacob awakened out of his sleep, and he said, "Surely the Lord is in this place." And he was afraid and said, "How dreadful is this place! This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven."